CBS Studios, New York, 1958, March, Sunday evening, 8:50, 10 minutes until live broadcast, Ed Sullivan Show. 10 million people waiting at their television sets. Backstage was chaos. Technical crew running final checks. Sponsors sitting in VIP section, hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. Louis Armstrong was 57 years old. He'd arrived with his orchestra, Arvell Shaw, Jack Teagarden, Trummy Young, all professionals, all ready. Louis entered his dressing room, took out his trumpet, polishing it. That familiar white handkerchief in his pocket, everything normal. Then a voice, from the hallway, sharp, demeaning, a producer's voice, yelling at young Arvell Shaw. Louis put down the handkerchief, walked to the corridor. What he saw froze him. The producer was pointing at Arvell. "Hey, boy, go get Mr. Sullivan some water." Arvell stood frozen. He was a musician, not a servant, but the producer was waiting. "You hear me? Go now." Louis's hand became a fist. 40 years a professional musician, had toured the world, met presidents, but this? This crossed the line. Louis walked forward. The producer noticed him, got annoyed. "Armstrong, mind your business," Louis answered, calm but firm. "This man is my musician, nobody's servant." The producer hardened. "This is our studio. You'll follow our rules." Louis nodded, turned, walked back into the dressing room, picked up his trumpet, put it in its case, looked at his orchestra members. "Pack up. We're leaving." Everyone shocked. 10 minutes until live broadcast. "What do you mean leaving?" Louis walked to the door. Orchestra followed. Producer yelled in panic, "Armstrong, stop. You have a contract." Louis didn't turn, kept walking. What happened that night? Why did Louis risk his 40-year career, and why did Ed Sullivan knock on Louis's door 3 weeks later? Before we explore this incredible story of courage, dignity, and the moment one man changed television history, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. What Louis Armstrong did that night went far beyond a single performance. To understand why Louis walked off that stage, we need to go back, not just days, but decades. Louis Armstrong was born August 4th, 1901. New Orleans, poverty, violence, abandonment. By age 11, Louis was in the Colored Waifs Home for Boys, a reform school. That's where he first held a trumpet. That's where he learned music could be salvation. From those desperate beginnings, Louis built something extraordinary. By the 1920s, he was revolutionizing jazz, Hot 5 recordings, Hot 7, creating techniques that would define the genre forever. By the 1930s, he was international, known worldwide. By the 1940s and 50s, Louis Armstrong wasn't just a musician, he was an icon, Ambassador Satch, America's goodwill ambassador to the world. But Louis carried something heavy, a burden that came with being a successful black artist in mid-century America. He'd spent 40 years navigating impossible choices, smile when you're angry, perform when you're exhausted. Accept indignities with grace because showing anger means losing work, means not being able to support your family, means being labeled difficult. Louis had mastered this survival strategy. The grin, the handkerchief, the entertaining persona. White audiences loved it, felt comfortable with it. But behind that smile was a man who'd witnessed and experienced things that would break most people. Then came 1957. Little Rock, Arkansas, Central High School. 9 black students trying to integrate. Governor Faubus blocking them with National Guard troops. President Eisenhower initially refusing to intervene. And Louis Armstrong, who usually stayed quiet about politics, exploded. Called the president two-faced. Said he had no guts. Canceled a State Department tour to the Soviet Union in protest. The jazz world was stunned. Louis Armstrong, the smiling entertainer, had shown his anger, shown his pain, shown his true feelings about the country he represented abroad. Some praised him, called him brave, a hero. Others criticized him, called him ungrateful, difficult, a troublemaker. That controversy was still fresh in March 1958. Louis was aware that some people in the entertainment industry now saw him differently, not just as safe, reliable Satchmo, but as someone who might cause problems, might speak out, might not follow the rules. But Louis didn't regret his Little Rock statement. For the first time in decades, he'd been completely honest, and it felt liberating. Louis' orchestra in 1958 was more than just a band, it was family. Arvell Shaw had been Louis' bassist since 1945, 13 years together, thousands of performances. Louis had watched Arvell grow from a young talent into a mature artist, treated him like a younger brother, mentored him, protected him. That's who Lewis was, fiercely loyal to his people, would do anything for them. The Ed Sullivan Show in 1958 was the most powerful platform in American entertainment. Started in 1948 as Toast of the Town. By the mid-50s, it was simply the Ed Sullivan Show. Every Sunday night, 8:30. 10 to 15 million viewers performing on Sullivan could make a career overnight. Elvis had appeared. The Rolling Stones would appear. The Beatles would have their legendary American debut there in 1964. Being invited to Sullivan was a huge honor, validation, but it also meant dealing with CBS, with network rules, with producers who held enormous power. And in 1958, despite the civil rights movement gaining momentum, despite the Supreme Court's Brown decision 4 years earlier, backstage at many television studios still operated under unwritten segregation rules. Black artists and crew members often had separate dressing rooms, separate bathrooms, separate eating areas. These weren't official policies, no signs saying whites only, just tradition, just how things were done, and most black performers accepted it because fighting meant not working, meant being blacklisted, meant losing income. Louis had dealt with this his entire career, performed in venues where he entered through the back door, stayed in hotels that barely tolerated his presence, ate in restaurants that served him in the kitchen. He'd swallowed this humiliation thousands of times. But something had changed in Louis after Little Rock, after speaking out, after realizing that his voice mattered, that staying silent wasn't protecting anyone. It was enabling the system. About this story. The information in this video is compiled from documented interviews, archival news, books, and historical reports. For narrative purposes, some parts are dramatized and may not represent 100% factual accuracy. We also use AI-assisted visuals and AI narration for cinematic reconstruction. The use of AI does not mean the story is fake. It is a storytelling tool. Our goal is to recreate the spirit of that era as faithfully as possible. Enjoy watching. Sunday, March 16th, 1958. Louis and his orchestra arrived at CBS Studios around 6 in the evening, 2.5 hours before broadcast, standard procedure, time for setup, sound check, preparation. The building was buzzing. Ed Sullivan Show was a machine, precise, professional. Everyone knew their role. Louis had been on the show before, knew the routine, was comfortable. His orchestra was excited. Network television, millions of viewers, great exposure. They set up their instruments in the designated area, ran through some arrangements, everything sounding good. Around 8 o'clock, they moved to the dressing rooms. That's when Louis started noticing things. The way staff spoke to his musicians, short, curt, different tone than how they spoke to white performers, the way they were directed to a dressing room in a different corridor, farther from the stage, smaller. Louis had been through this before, usually let it go, focused on the performance, but tonight felt different. At 8:30, Louis was in his dressing room with Arvell Shaw and Trummy Young, talking, relaxing, preparing mentally for the show. Then came a knock, a young CBS production assistant. "Mr. Armstrong, we need to do a final microphone check." Louis nodded. "Be right there." The assistant left. Louis stood, picked up his trumpet, started toward the door, then heard something from the hallway. A voice, loud, authoritative, and disrespectful. "Where's that boy with the bass? We need him to move his instrument." Louis paused, opened the door, saw a middle-aged producer, well-dressed, clipboard in hand, looking for Arvell. The producer saw Louis. "Armstrong, is the bass player in there?" Louis felt tension rising, the tone, the assumption that he could just summon Arvell like a servant. "His name is Arvell Shaw. He's a musician, not a boy." The producer's expression tightened. "I don't have time for this. We go live in 50 minutes. He walked past Louis into the dressing room, saw Arvell. "You, bass. Your instrument's blocking a camera angle. Move it now." Arvell stood. "Yes, sir, I'll move it right away." He started toward the door, but the producer wasn't done. "And after that, go get Mr. Sullivan some water. He needs it before air." Arvell stopped, confused. "I'm sorry?" The producer turned, annoyed. "Water. For Ed Sullivan. Are you deaf?" Louis stepped forward. "Arvell is my bass player, not a stagehand, not a servant. You want water for Mr. Sullivan? Ask someone whose job that is." The producer's face reddened. "Listen, Armstrong, I respect your music, but this is my set, my show. I give the instructions here. Your people do what I say." "Your people." Those two words hung in the air. Arvell looked at Louis, unsure what to do. Louis's jaw tightened. Arvel, go ahead and move your bass. That's a legitimate request. But you're not getting anyone water. The producer stepped closer to Lewis, voice low but hard. Armstrong, I don't know what game you're playing, but you have a contract. You're on in 45 minutes. I suggest you get your people in line and do your job. Louis looked at the producer, really looked at him, saw everything he'd been dealing with for 40 years, every indignity, every swallowed insult, every time he'd smiled when he wanted to scream. And Louis made a decision. You're right. I do have a contract, and I'm breaking it. Louis turned to his orchestra. Gentlemen, pack your instruments. We're leaving. The room went silent. Arvel's eyes widened. Pops, what? Trummy Young stood. Louis, we go on in less than an hour. Louis was already packing his trumpet. I know, but we're not performing. Not here, not tonight. The producer laughed, disbelieving. You're joking. You can't walk out. Do you know how much this costs? The sponsors? The lawsuits you'll face? Louis closed his trumpet case, looked directly at the producer. I've been playing for 40 years, been all over the world, met kings and presidents, and everywhere I go I'm treated with respect. But here, in my own country, on American television, my musicians are called boys and told to fetch water? No, I'm done. Louis walked toward the door. His orchestra hesitated. Then Arvel picked up his bass. Trummy grabbed his trombone. One by one, they followed Louis. The producer ran after them. Armstrong, this is career suicide. CBS will blacklist you. You'll never work network television again. Louis kept walking, through the corridor, past shocked crew members, past other performers who stared. Louis Armstrong, walking away. 10 minutes before live broadcast, Ed Sullivan was in his own dressing room when someone burst in. Ed, Armstrong's leaving. He's walking out. Ed jumped up, ran toward the backstage exit, saw Louis and his orchestra at the door. Louis, wait, what's happening? Louis turned, looked at Ed. Ed, you run a good show, but your staff doesn't know how to treat people with dignity. I can't perform under these conditions. Ed looked confused. What did someone do? Louis explained. Quickly, calmly. The producer, the disrespect, the your people comment. Ed's face went pale. Louis, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Please, let me fix this. Louis shook his head. Ed, I've heard that before, always, let me fix this after the fact. But it keeps happening because nobody stands up and says enough. Ed Sullivan was genuinely distressed. This wasn't just about losing a performer. This was about something bigger. Louis, you're right. You're absolutely right, but please don't leave like this. Let me make this right, not just for tonight, for good. Louis paused, hand on the door. How? Ed thought fast. Give me 1 hour after the show, I promise. You, that producer will be fired, and I'll personally ensure CBS changes its backstage policies, but I need you to know I'll do this whether you come back or not because it's right. Louis studied Ed's face, saw sincerity, but also saw desperation. Ed, I appreciate that, but I'm still leaving. My orchestra and I will wait in my hotel. If you do what you say you'll do, call me. We can talk about the future, but tonight, we're done. Louis walked out into the cold March night. 8:45, 15 minutes until broadcast. Inside CBS, chaos erupted. Producers scrambling. What do we open with? Who can fill? Sponsors on the phone, furious, demanding explanations. Ed Sullivan had to go on air, had to introduce the show, had to pretend everything was fine, but inside, he was shaken. At 9 o'clock, Ed Sullivan appeared on television sets across America. Good evening. Tonight we have a wonderful show for you, he smiled. Professional, smooth, but attentive viewers might have noticed. Something different in his eyes, a heaviness. The show went on. Other performers filled time, but everyone backstage knew Louis Armstrong had just done something unprecedented. Have you ever stood up for someone even when it cost you something valuable? Share your story in the comments. The next morning, Monday, March 17th, the phone started ringing. Press had heard something happened, rumors spreading. CBS tried to downplay it. Scheduling conflict, technical difficulties. But by afternoon, the real story leaked. New York Times got it, Chicago Tribune, Los Angeles Times, Louis Armstrong walks off Ed Sullivan Show. Armstrong refuses to perform over treatment of musicians. Jazz legend protests CBS backstage policies. The articles divided opinion. Some called Louis unprofessional, breach of contract, diva behavior. How dare he walk away from such an opportunity? But others praised him, called him courageous, a civil rights pioneer standing up for dignity, for his people. Musicians started responding. Nat King Cole released a statement. Louis Armstrong did what many of us have wanted to do for years. He stood up, Ella Fitzgerald called Lewis personally. "Pops, you're a hero," Duke Ellington told reporters. "Armstrong reminded us that we don't have to accept disrespect no matter how prestigious the venue." Sammy Davis Jr., who'd experienced his own share of discrimination despite fame, said, "Louis showed us you can say no, even to Ed Sullivan." But the controversy also brought backlash. Some venues canceled Lewis's upcoming performances. Didn't want controversy. Didn't want a troublemaker. Some radio stations stopped playing his records, temporarily. Sponsors got nervous. Louis' manager called, worried. "Louis, this is getting serious. CBS is talking about suing. Other networks are watching. This could really hurt." Louis was calm. "Then let it hurt. Some things are more important than my career." That Monday evening, Ed Sullivan kept his promise, called the producer who disrespected Arvell into his office, witnesses present. "You're fired. Effective immediately. What you did was unacceptable, and it's cost this show its integrity." The producer tried to argue. "Ed, I was just trying to keep things running smoothly." Ed cut him off. "By demeaning people, by treating musicians like servants, that's not how we run this show. Pack your things." The producer left, angry, humiliated, but gone. Next, Ed Sullivan called CBS executives, demanded a meeting. Tuesday morning, Ed was in the boardroom, top network brass. Ed laid it out. "We have a systemic problem. Our backstage treatment of black artists and crew is discriminatory. It needs to change immediately." Executives pushed back. "Ed, these are delicate issues. We can't just—" Ed interrupted. "Yes, we can, and we will, because if we don't, I'll go public. I'll tell every newspaper what happened, what Louis Armstrong walked away from, and CBS will look like exactly what it is, complicit in discrimination." The room went quiet. Ed continued. "Here's what's happening. Effective immediately, all dressing rooms are assigned based on role, not race. All facilities are shared equally. All staff will undergo training on respectful treatment of every person in this building, and I want it in writing. Official policy." The executives consulted, worried about costs, about pushback, but also worried about publicity, about losing talent, about being on the wrong side of history. By Wednesday, CBS issued an internal memo, sweeping changes to backstage policies, all employees to treat all artists and crew with equal dignity and respect. Facilities to be desegregated. Violations would result in termination. Ed Sullivan personally supervised implementation. Thursday, Ed called Louis. "Louis, it's Ed. I've done what I promised. The producer is gone. CBS has changed its official policies. It's in writing. But I'm not calling to convince you to come back. I'm calling to thank you for showing me what I should have been doing all along." Louis was quiet, then spoke. "Ed, I appreciate that, but words are easy. I need to see action." Ed understood. "Come by the studio. Anytime. See for yourself. Bring your whole orchestra. I'll give you a complete tour, show you the changes, and if you're satisfied, I'd be honored if you'd consider performing on the show again. Not now, whenever you're ready." Louis thought about it. "I'll come next week. I'll see what's changed. Then I'll decide. Please subscribe if this story is showing you what real courage looks like. The conclusion will inspire you to stand up for what's right." The following Tuesday, Louis and his full orchestra visited CBS studios, unannounced to most staff. Ed Sullivan personally met them at the entrance, gave them a complete tour, showed them the new dressing room assignments, mixed, integrated, no separation by race, showed them the shared facilities, bathrooms, dining areas, everything equal, introduced them to new backstage supervisors who'd been briefed on the new policies, respectful, professional. Louis talked to black crew members, asked about their experiences. Had things really changed? They confirmed. Different atmosphere, more respectful, better treatment. Louis saw it with his own eyes. This wasn't performative. These were real structural changes. After the tour, Ed and Louis sat in Ed's office. "Louis, I can't undo decades of wrong, but I can commit to doing better going forward, and I mean that." Louis nodded. "Ed, I believe you what you've done here. It matters not just for this show, but for what it represents. Change is possible when people have the courage to demand it." Ed leaned forward. "Louis, will you come back? Not for me, not for CBS, for everyone watching, to show them that standing up for yourself works, that dignity can be won." Louis smiled. That Satchmo smile. "Ed, I'll come back, but on one condition. When I perform, I want to play Black and Blue, the whole song. No cuts, no edits." Ed knew that song, a protest song, about racism, about pain, about being black in America. Louis, that's a powerful statement. Are you sure? Louis was certain. That's my condition. We do it my way or we don't do it. Ed extended his hand. Deal. May 4th, 1958. Ed Sullivan Show. Louis Armstrong returned. The announcement had been in newspapers. Armstrong returns to Sullivan after backstage policy changes. Audiences were curious. What would happen? Louis walked onto that stage to thunderous applause, not just for his music, for what he represented, for what he'd done. Ed Sullivan introduced him warmly, with genuine respect. Louis and his orchestra performed several numbers, crowd loved every moment. Then Louis stepped to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to do a special song tonight. It's called Black and Blue. Some of you know it. It's about what it feels like to be judged by your color instead of your character, but it's also about hope, about believing things can change. The studio went quiet. Louis began singing, his gravelly voice full of emotion. Real emotion, not performance, truth. My only sin is in my skin. What did I do to be so black and blue? The song was raw, painful, honest. Some audience members cried, others sat in stunned silence. This wasn't entertainment, this was testimony. When Louis finished, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then the audience rose. Standing ovation, not just polite applause, genuine, moved appreciation. Ed Sullivan had tears in his eyes. That night changed something, not just at CBS, but in how television approached racial issues. Other networks took notice, started examining their own policies. Louis had shown that an artist could stand up, could demand change, and could win. In the following years, Louis and Ed Sullivan became genuine friends. Ed never forgot the lesson Louis taught him. That dignity isn't negotiable. That respect is a right, not a privilege. When Louis died in July 1971, Ed Sullivan attended the funeral, spoke about Louis's courage. Louis Armstrong didn't just change music, he changed how we treat each other. That night in March 1958, he taught me the most important lesson of my career. That doing the right thing is more important than doing the convenient thing. The story of Louis walking off Ed Sullivan's stage became legendary, a moment when one man's refusal to accept disrespect changed an entire industry. Not through violence, not through threats, but through simple, dignified insistence that people be treated as human beings. Louis never bragged about what he did, never made speeches about it. When asked, he'd simply say, "I couldn't let my boys be disrespected. They're family. You protect family." But others understood the deeper meaning. Louis had shown that progress doesn't happen automatically. It happens when someone has the courage to say enough, to walk away from opportunity rather than compromise dignity, to risk everything for principle. Thank you, Louis Armstrong, for showing us that real strength isn't in always saying yes. It's in knowing when to say no. For teaching us that career, fame, and money mean nothing if you lose your self-respect. For demonstrating that one person standing up can change systems that seem unchangeable. That March night, that walk to the door, that refusal to perform, forever teaching us, forever inspiring us, forever reminding us that dignity isn't something you ask for, it's something you demand. That respect isn't earned through compliance, it's claimed through courage. That the most powerful performance isn't the one you give on stage, it's the one you give when you walk off that stage with your head high, with your principles intact, with your humanity uncompromised. The spotlight has faded, the applause has ended. Louis and Ed have both taken their final bows, but their lesson remains bright, clear, eternal. Stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Walk away from situations that demean your dignity. Demand the change you know is right. Because that's not just activism, that's humanity. That's courage. That's jazz at its finest. Not the notes you play, but the stand you take. Not the tune you perform, but the truth you defend. Louis Armstrong, March 1958, walking out of CBS studios, trumpet in hand, orchestra behind him, head held high, forever changing television, forever changing America, forever showing us what it means to be truly free. Not free to perform, but free to refuse, free to demand respect, free to say, not today, not like this, not ever again, always, forever, The ultimate performance, the one that really matters, the one that changes everything. Louis Armstrong, the man who walked away and in walking away moved the world forward forever.